Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about 3 different rules that worked well in my school that I was at this past year, 3 rules that didn't work so well and might need a little changing, and finally the way that bureaucracy is still alive in school today. So the first rule that I'm going to talk about is a chain of command that we had in our school. This was for if there were any issues, say a parent had an issue with the classroom, the chain of command started with the teacher, then went to the principal, superintendent, and finally the board of education. So this was just a way to kind of diffuse any fires that may have been started, because if someone goes straight to a board member, they might not know what's going on in the classroom. They may have never been in your classroom, so this was just a way to kind of, start out simple, and if it needed to be, you can go higher on the chain, but kind of just taking control of the situation. The second rule that I'm going to talk to you about is a visitor check-in that we have that is required at our school if you're coming to visit. Coming from a small town school, moving there and not knowing anyone, everybody knows everyone, so it's easy to say, yeah, they're supposed to be here, but I didn't know anyone, so having the visitor check-in was really nice so I could make sure the person who's in my classroom is supposed to be there and everyone knows who they are, because it would feel kind of weird, a former, retired teacher asking them, why are you here, what are you doing, making sure they're supposed to be there, and just so that check-in is really great to make sure you have the right people in your school. The third rule that I'm going to talk about is a rule that we had in our classroom. Each Friday I sent home a transportation slip for the parents and the students to fill out together. That way the next week at the end of the day we're all on the same page of who's supposed to go where, and it was a constant communication that I had with the parents that I think worked out really well for our classroom. Next, I'm going to talk to you about some rules that didn't work out so nicely for our school. The first rule was found in our head book about dress code, and everybody loves dress code, I know that, but, we had our usual no spaghetti straps, no midriffs, no see-through mesh shirts, all that fun stuff, but then at the end it said the administrator reserves the right to handle situations not covered on a case basis, and I just felt like there was too much gray area, too much not enough structure, and I feel like there was too much room for bias in there. So another issue with the dress code rules in the handbook states that each student should dress in a fashion that reflects good taste, and again I feel like this leaves way too much gray area and creates more problems than it solves. The next rule that I'm going to talk to you about that caused more problems than it solved was having all the students exit out of the same door at the end of the day. My small school is kindergarten through 6th grade, and so, having 6th graders ready to go, ready to be done for the day, going out the same door as kindergartners caused a lot of problems. There was confusion. Kindergartners were getting pushed down, and it was just really stressful for them. So that was a rule that caused more problems than it solved. The last rule that I'm going to address is a rule change that happened in the middle of the year. Our school was separated into 2 different lunch periods, K through 3rd and then 4th through 6th. This worked out really well, but the older kids moved their noon recess up, causing an overlap for the different grade levels to be outside together, and we had the same issues that we had with dismissal. Kindergartners wanted to play with the big kids. They wanted to play their games, they wanted to be involved, but the 6th graders were just too rough, just not intentionally, just too rough. They were too big, and students were getting hurt, and equipment was getting taken over by the older kids, and so that's another issue that we had. And if I was in that position and I was the administrator, I would bring in everybody that would be affected, and I would address it with everyone and kind of bounce ideas off to them and see if they thought it was a good idea or not a good idea, and kind of go from there. I feel like that's an example of how hierarchy should have worked, but in this situation it was not working in the school systems like it should. Like we talked about in the chapter, hierarchy is supposed to have a downward and an upward flow, but in this situation it only had the downward flow. Another example where hierarchy did not work like it should in our school system, as administrators, they decided that every teacher would take part in this big, expensive professional development course over the summer, and since it was so expensive, the teachers were no longer to choose their own professional development or decide where they wanted to go. So I just feel like that's another example where there was a downward flow and there wasn't any discussion. And if I was in that position, I would bring my staff together and I would say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Do you think it's a good idea, or do you have any other ideas that you might think will work, and kind of go at it that way instead of just telling my staff what they're going to do. Another example of bureaucracy in the school that I see is decentralization. Since it's such a small school, my elementary principal also wore the hat of superintendent, so he wasn't around very much, and needing him kind of wasn't an option, so we kind of dealt with more of the discipline ourselves. We dealt with any of the issues that we may have had. And we also had more leeway of what went on in our classrooms and what kind of lessons we had, so that was nice, but we also had more responsibility and more authority that was divided up among the staff that we had. So my first video, I hope it wasn't too awful. I look forward to hearing from you guys, and good luck.